Hello to the pessimistic, optimistic, and everyone in between. My name is Connor Philippe, and welcome back to the Minnesotan Sports Podcast. And as you can see, I'm in a much different setting today because I have a guest with me, and my office is way too small. But I have my friend Jake with me. He was the best man at my wedding, and I have met him back in 2021. We were in Wilmer together doing an internship, and then just sports has been kind of how we met, how we stay friends, and we love talking about it together. So how are you doing today, Jake?
I'm doing good, Connor. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk about some Minnesota sports with you.
Sweet. So just kind of go over what your background is. You've had some experience with some sports jobs, and also just talk about what just maybe your top memories as a sports fan, your early childhood.
I can
stuff
do
like
that. Well, Minnesota sports fan, so I've been through the ups and downs of that. I grew up a diehard Twins fan and Vikings fan. Some of the earliest memories I have are going to the Metrodome and watching Joe Mauer, Justin Morneau, Joe Nathan, Kadire, all these names that have been a consistent in my life, watching those. I have a big passion for baseball. That's more my fanhood. Like, I love the Minnesota Twins, even if they break my heart year after year. But this year was special to kind of watch that, to see Royce Lewis take over in the playoffs, to see the guys actually get their first playoff win and playoff series win. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about this. We're going to go over a little bit of a State of the Vikings address after this. So you'll see another video in the next couple of days coming up. But we're just going to talk about the Twins because, first of all, you talked a little bit about it already. But, we were both at the game. Game 4 at Target Field where the Astros eventually won 3-2. That last strike goes by. What are your first thoughts? Because I know your first thoughts are very different than how you feel once you let it process a couple hours later. So what's the first thing you thought?
I mean, watching that strike 3 go by Kepler, that was tough. I kind of sat there thinking that if the Twins were going to make a legitimate push, it was going to be this team. It looked like our bullpen was starting to fire on all cylinders, our starting pitching. We had Pablo, who looked amazing against the Astros. Sonny struggled a little bit against the Astros, but he still looked good. We had a mix of guys with Ober. We had Joe Ryan. Still a little upset Joe didn't get more than a couple innings. I thought maybe you let him ride a little bit more, but obviously that was Rocco's department. He didn't see the same thing, so I understand it. But as I kind of sat on that loss and sat on it for a while, I was more happy seeing what we accomplished this year and saying that was a great start for what we could do in the future.
Right.
It got the spotlight on some guys like Royce Lewis. I've preached my entire time since he's been drafted that he was going to do something special here. And Royce killed it in the playoffs. He showed that he's ready to take over as another young star in that Minnesota core. A lot of people have been saying he's the Twins version of Justin Jefferson, Kaprizov, and Edwards. It's amazing to see him take over. A little upset that we lost Sonny to free agency, and it'll be hard to replace him, but I like where our pitching looks right now and feel like we can only go up from there.
It might have been a little bit of a leap, but when I saw what Royce Lewis did throughout the season and then into the playoffs, my first thought was honestly Derek Jeter. And that might be a little bit over the top, but that clutchness, that energy he brought the team instantly, that's just kind of where my mind went initially. And obviously he has a long way to go before he proves that, but that's just what I thought.
I'll second this by saying I didn't see Jeter. I saw 2017 Correa. I saw that energy that he brought to Houston, and granted we all know how that turned out, but I saw that same kind of drive and that same kind of emotion on the field from him, and I feel like he showed that leadership and showed 2017 Correa playoff special. I think having the two of them on that left side of the infield is amazing, and I think he's been a huge mentor to him, but that was the biggest thing I saw out of it.
I agree with that too. So let's move on here about the whole salary reduction thing. So that is initially a lot of frustration when I saw that because you're going from a team that has done more than a Twins team has done in 25 years. And then I understand that there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't really know or understand what's happening with all the TV deals and everything. But it just feels like another thing where the poll ads and their history. It was. What did you feel about that when you first heard about it? Did you see it coming?
I didn't see it coming. I was a little shocked that Falvey announced that and
Mm-hmm.
openly said that. I feel as a fan, being transparent is important from a front office to a fandom to your fans. You should be as transparent as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I didn't see it coming. I, in the initial reaction, I was upset. I was thinking, man, we got that close. We were in the ALDS. We had so much room to grow from there. And it seemed at first like, oh, we're not going to take that next step. But after doing a little digging, looking at what our payroll is right now, we have a lot of unused payroll because
Mm-hmm.
of the young guys on our roster and the young guys coming up through the minors that we can save money by trusting in our young guys. And Royce is still on his rookie deal. Wallner, we got Varland, we've got Austin Martin's on the way, we've got
Mm-hmm.
Brooks Lee on the way, Emmanuel Rodriguez is on the way. We have a lot of talent coming up that's cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And I think while it sucks to hear as a fan that we're not going to spend money to succeed, I feel like they're going to be creative in how they can bring in a replacement for Sonny Gray, how they can bring in a guy who, if Buxton isn't at 100%, we need someone in center field. I think they're going to be creative with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And really, when you look at it, when the Tampa Bay Rays exist, it's just proof that you can do a lot with a little. And obviously, if you have the opportunity to spend a lot of money in free agency, you should. And it's frustrating when you don't. But I think people are acting like because we're spending anywhere between 20 to 30 million less, that all of a sudden we're not going to be good.
Yeah.
And that's just not the way baseball works. If that was the case, the Yankees and Dodgers would be playing in the World Series every single year, and the fact that it isn't is pretty good indication that the Twins can still do a lot with what we have, and that's why farm systems are so important. But that kind of brings things into the next thing where I'm curious how you feel about this. So this off season and this season in general, is going to have a lot to do with managing that balance between okay, so we need some reliable guys, we know that, but there are so many guys on this team. We've got guys like Jose Miranda and like Austin Martin coming up, Nick Gordon, Kirilloff, who needs to prove a lot this year, and then Larnick and Wallner. I mean, it's a mix of guys that are just coming up that we feel like we want to make sure we get some playing time to. And then there are guys like Miranda and Gordon who were hurt a lot of last season and showed so many different sides of the spectrum. We saw Miranda in his rookie season play so well, and then before he got hurt last season, he was just awful. Same thing with Nick Gordon, and it seems like Gordon brings a lot of energy to the team even when he's not playing. So my question is, what do you think the Twins should do in terms of managing the difference between signing guys that are going to take playing time away from them and giving them some playing time? Because at the end of the day, these guys are going to be big for us, but how much confidence are we going to try and place in these guys bringing us to where we need to get to? Is it a thing where maybe we'll just let these guys roll and see what happens at the trade deadline? Because we just have an interesting situation with all these young guys coming up.
Yeah, I think balance is a huge word there. You can't just let the kids take over and have a consistent lineup of just guys who are trying to get that shot. You need to have a good balance of veteran help. You have to have a good balance of veteran pitching, veteran bullpen, and veteran hitting, infield, outfield, and behind the plate. I think the best way to say it is like if we can be creative, like what I was saying with the salary reduction, we might not see a couple of those names around, and we might not see the same people we've seen in lineups past.
Mm-hmm.
There's already talks of Polanco and Kepler being shopped. There's talks of Vasquez being shopped. There's talks of the Twins going after a top end pitching rotation where we can get a guy like Corbin Burns, a guy like Shane Bieber, but we'll have to lose someone like Brooks Lee, Austin Martin, and it sucks that we're in a position where the young guys are looking good. And I mean, I was drooling over the fact that an infield was looking like it could be Royce Lewis, Carlos Correa, Brooks Lee, and Alex Kirilloff. But like you're saying, Kirilloff has a lot to prove this year.
Mm-hmm.
Larnick has a lot to prove. He hasn't delivered like Twins fans wanted him to. He hasn't shown that same energy, that same bat that we got used to seeing at Oregon State. And I think Larnick's on his last step.
Mm-hmm.
If we're not going to shop him, it's one of those we need to either get him to start producing on an everyday basis or he's out the door.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Nick Gordon. I love the spark we see from him, but that spark can't only be once every 7 or 8 games. It has to be a consistent factor in it. I love him as a teammate. He was always on the bench for the playoffs, but he still had a towel in hand. He was up on the top step, getting everyone hyped up, and I loved to see that energy. But I think balancing out your veterans with your up-and-coming guys is going to be a tough task, and I think the winter meetings are going to show what the Twins are going to do with this. Are we going to let the kids take over? Are we going to get a good balance, or is it going to be more of a veterans game?
Mm-hmm.
And only time will tell after the winter meetings and getting into that spring training area.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It kind of leads now into the last part of it, which is let's make a little bit of a prediction on what we think will happen in free agency. Obviously, this is a season where so much is up in the air based off of the, Felvey basically said 125 to 140 is the range. I think a lot of people are anticipating it to be closer to that 125, but with especially that much of a gap, it's kind of a lot of speculation onto what we're going to do. But I'm going to say, in my opinion, I think that the Twins are going to end up getting 2 full-time starting type positions. And obviously we're going to get more than that in depth and everything like that. But in my opinion, I think what we should do is we should get 1 position player to play every game or most games, and then we can get 1 guy in the starting rotation. And maybe we won't get both of those, but I hope we can. And if I could pick one of those positions that we're going to put a solid guy, a veteran presence, who's been in the league for at least a while, who has a lot of talent and that we can rely on, I think it should be the center field position. And the reason I say that is because, you've got guys like Nick Gordon, obviously, who, we can't rely on their bat. And we obviously lost Michael A. Taylor. And first base, I think, is one of those where we could potentially get a guy like that. But I think we just have Miranda. Kirilloff could play first. I mean, Larnick could even play first. There's so many guys on our team that could do that, whereas we need a guy that can make plays in center field. We saw that, Michael A. Taylor saved game 1 in the wild card. It's a position that you need to have a guy that you can rely on. And I think maybe having Cody Bellinger is a little too much to ask for. Obviously, I would love if we could get him because I think that change in scenery for him last year, it just seems like he fit better in the Midwest.
Yeah.
The lights in Los Angeles ended up being a little too bright for him, and that happens to a lot of players. And it's the reason why the Dodgers and Yankees tend to struggle sometimes with some of these guys. But he's 28. He hit the cover off the ball last season, and he's an impact center fielder defensively. And that combination of things, I can't find very many players in this list that can do that for us. And it's possible we could go for a left fielder too, but I just don't know if there's any other position that we need more to have a guy in there that we can trust every single game to produce. So what do you think about that? And if there was a center fielder you wanted, Do you think we could get Cody Bellinger?
See, Cody is an interesting one. There's already the hype around the Yankees looking at him. The
Mm-hmm.
Cubs are obviously not wanting to leave him without giving him a shot to come back. And it was so great to see him come back to that MVP year form with the Cubs. I was always a big Bellinger guy. I remember the Twins shopping Dozier in the 2016-17 range, and the only acceptable return they wanted was Bellinger, and that's what the deal fell through. But I love Bellinger. I don't think it's realistic for the Twins with this talk of a spending reduction. We already have Buxton and Correa on the books for a couple of years. We've got Lopez on the books for a couple of years. I don't think we can offer that kind of contract he's looking for. There are two names on the list that excite me. One is a veteran guy who is not going to cost too much. He's shown that he is an amazing everyday fielder. The bat sometimes is there. It's not always there, but we have seen him win gold gloves. We've seen him be a consistent threat in the outfield, and that's Kevin Kiermaier.
That's what I was guessing you would say.
I love Kevin Kiermaier's game. I've been a big fan of his for a while. He's a gold glove center fielder. He still has that same energy in the outfield. He's a consistent one in the field. At the plate, we're going to assume we can get like a 230, 240 season from him at the plate. And sometimes that's even generous, but I would still love to have Kiermaier in Minnesota. The assumption with all this, though, is that Buxton isn't going to be playing 100-plus games in the outfield, which...
And, yeah, I don't think we will ever see that again. And I truly don't think that we will ever see a healthy Byron Buxton back on the field.
And that bums me out because I've been a huge Buxton guy since day one, but I really hope that... I heard his knee surgery went really well. He's starting to recover, and baseball activities are going to start up before the end of the year. Great to hear, but a name on this list that I'm looking at that kind of surprises me that he's a free agent and he has a little bit of potential to get a new space, a new look, is Kyle Lewis. He won that Rookie of the Year award in Seattle. Obviously, Seattle's got a little bit more of a better outfielder now in Julio Rodriguez. He went to Arizona, didn't really get his shot there, and now he's a free agent. I like the idea. I like him. He is a good player. He's got a good glove. He's got a decent bat. He's fast on the base paths. I like to give him a shot. Just one of those prove it deals that the Twins love to do. The 1 year, $2 million, say, hey, we're going to give you this. It's not much, but you're going to show us what you can do, and then you're going to go make your money somewhere else. So I love the name Kyle Lewis. I think that's one where we could bring him in, get him under Buxton's wing, get him with Torrey Hunter during spring training, and maybe we can see something special.
Okay. We'll finish things off with pitching, but before I go to pitching, are there any other position players? Like, for example, we're good at second base unless we get rid of Polanco.
Yeah.
I personally would much rather get rid of Kepler over Polanco. Polanco has at least shown that he can perform in the playoffs, and Kepler has played, 12 postseason games now?
Yeah. And I'm not gonna. I never hold one at bat against somebody, but to watch the end of the season happen because Kepler couldn't take the bat off his shoulder with Carlos Correa on deck, that stings, and I still think about that. But I think Kepler has more of a trade value. People are always looking for that right fielder. He's got an amazing glove. He's got a good arm. I feel like we could bring in something with that.
Yeah. And what do you think? Okay, if we were to get rid of Kepler, would you rather get a replacement for Kepler at right field, or would you rather try and get a reliable first baseman? Because we have a lot of depth at the first baseman position, but it's been a while since we've had a steady first baseman.
Yeah, I think I'd go for that first base position. I cannot tell you the last time we had a reliable first baseman every day in the lineup was the middle of the Joe Mauer years and the Justin Morneau years. We haven't had a consistent first baseman since then. We've jumped from like C.J. Cron. We had Miguel Sano there. We even had Willians Astudillo playing games there. We need someone who can have first base, say that is yours. You can stay there. You're going to be in the lineup every day. we'll give you a couple of bench spots. But I think there's one name that everyone talks about with first baseman, Rhys Hoskins.
Mm-hmm.
Phillies look like they're moving on from him. They're moving Bryce Harper to first. And while that sucks because Rhys is kind of that well-known Philly name, I would love to have him in Minnesota, having that power bat, having him being in the middle of our lineup. But I'm also excited about potential trade targets because I hear Mets are looking to move Alonso to get him off the books. I'd love to have Pete, but we need some power there. We need a consistent 30 home run bat there. And I think Alonso or Hoskins will do it for us.
I agree. What would you be willing to part with for Alonso?
Now that's $1 million question because I'm one of those guys who I love to hoard prospects, and I hate watching them leave just because we've seen some deals work out, some deals are amazing, and some deals don't. We're looking at Encarnacion Strand and Spencer Steer looking good for the Reds. Yennier Cano had a great season with the Orioles, and these are all Twins prospects that we watched walk out the door. And if it's a possibility, if we can get a good deal from it, I'd be willing to let up one of our bigger prospects. If we can move one like an Austin Martin or a Brooks Lee, if that would start the conversation, I'd have that conversation.
Okay. So going to pitching, let's say we each name 3 names quickly of starting pitchers that we would let's just cancel for now. We're not going to get Ohtani.
Yeah,
I don't think
happening.
We're not going to get Snell either.
No.
Those are the 2 I think that we 100% would not be able to pay. Kershaw is getting re-signed by the Dodgers. It happens every single season.
He keeps saying that, oh, well, maybe I'll look for somewhere else. Everyone talks about Texas. That's his home. Oh, he's going to go back. If Texas went and got Kershaw, you're telling me the 3 most injury-prone pitchers in one rotation in DeGrom, Scherzer, and Kershaw, amazing on paper.
Yeah.
Horrible if you're looking for an innings count from these guys.
Right. So I think for the most part that leaves guys that we could at least try to afford. My guys, both in terms of the amount that it would cost and what I think they'd bring to the team, I'd love to go with Stroman. Try and sign him. Him being 33 might bring at least a little of his value down. I still think it's going to be a lot to ask for to get him. But I really love him. And then I think, honestly, I kind of like the idea of trying to go for Lucas Giolito. I think that he has had his moments, and I don't think he would replace Sonny Gray by any means. But I think with the reliable top 2 or 3 we have in our rotation right now, it would be worth taking a risk on a guy like Lucas Giolito, who's still 29. And then, obviously, what's important about this is that there is still the trade deadline. So I think I'd like to take a potential risk on him. And the third, I don't know, I like the idea of Jordan Montgomery or Woodruff, but that third spot's kind of up in the air for me. But Stroman and Giolito are definitely guys that I want to target.
Yeah, I agree on both of those. A little hesitant on Giolito. I've watched too many games where he leaves it over the plate and it's served up for those hitters.
Yeah.
And unless you talk him into doing long relief, I don't see Giolito filling that spot. And the important thing here is that nobody can replace Sonny Gray. That's second in the Cy Young voting. I don't think that we're going to be able to replace those numbers. I think we're going to try and do what we can to rebuild it. I think if we're getting a Cy Young pitcher, it's going to be Pablo. But I love Montgomery. Great showing in the World Series. Great showing in the playoffs. I love that name. I think he would be a solid foundation, like middle of the rotation piece for us. Woodruff, I like the name. We have to remember, though, he's sitting a year after that Tommy John surgery. So if we signed him to a 2-year deal, we're only going to see 1 year of it. And even then, is he going to be the same pitcher coming out of it? I like him. I like what he showed in Milwaukee. That 1-2 punch of Woodruff and Burns is amazing. Stroman, I like his game. He showed up in Chicago, and he had a great start to the season. Kind of quiet towards the end. Not the same Stroman we saw. I don't know, maybe Pete Mackey can get back in the lab with him and get him going. Um, I think one name here that not a lot of people have been talking about this free agency is Eduardo Rodriguez. He
Oh
was
yeah.
a solid pitcher for Detroit. He's already not coming back. Los Angeles was connected to him. Toronto was connected to him. I think if we can sneak in the door and get him on a good deal, I'd love to have Erod in our roster.
Yeah, I definitely one of those guys where the team he was on kind of overshadows. It's just one of those things where like if you're on a team that sucks as a pitcher, you don't get on the radar a whole lot at the beginning of the season. I feel
No.
like some of the like Tigers players always seem to go at the trade deadline. Yeah, I agree with that as well. Last thing here as we come to a close, I know that it's literally the beginning of the off season, but give me a quick prediction. Do you think the Twins will be able to repeat what they did this season? Do you think they won't be able to? Do you think they'll be able to get to a better point? Obviously, it depends on so many factors. What do you think about that?
I mean, if you were to ask me right now, do the Twins take the Central again? I say yes. I think the foundation is there. We have stuff to build off of, and we have so many reinforcements coming
Mm-hmm.
that it's going to look amazing. Our biggest competition is Detroit, and I never thought I would say
Yeah,
that. Detroit came out of nowhere. AJ Hinch at the helm, which everyone thought after they signed Javi Baez, which he's starting to look like Javi Baez of old. Hopefully that continues for him. But
mm-hmm.
I I think it'll be a dogfight between those two. I feel like Cleveland had their window and it's going to be time to rebuild. Chicago, it seems like a dumpster fire down there.
Yeah,
And I don't know what's going on with them. And Kansas City is Kansas City. They got Bobby Witt, amazing. They got Salvi, awesome. Are they really going to compete this next year? I
yeah,
don't think so. I think the Twins take the Central. I think if we can fill a role similar to Sonny Gray, or we can get a good rotation, I think we could make it to the ALCS. World Series is going to be tough. There's
mm-hmm.
always tough competition in the Astros. There's tough competition coming out of the AL East, but I think if we can build off this foundation we have, why not? Why not us?
Yeah. I think that if we are going, I also think we're going to win the division. I don't think that the Tigers are quite there yet, where they can overtake us. I think that the concern here is that with the drop off we might have in pitching with the getting rid of Sonny Gray, whoever it is that replaces him will not be enough, like we talked about. And so it just concerns me that we're now going to need more from a hitting core that already was the reason why we lost in the ALDS. We had Lewis, we had Correa, and Polanco had his moments. Farmer even got one home run, and that's
And
about it.
and Julian showed up.
That's
Julian's
right,
another
yeah.
name to look for. I
Mm-hmm.
think we're going to see a lot of production from that guy, but as you're saying, the hitting is something that needs to be worked on. And I think in my entire life of being a Twins fan, I never thought I'd have to say that pitching is our strong suit and
Yeah.
hitting is where we need to improve. I hope they make the necessary changes. I hope they bring in some guys. I hope our guys can take another step and be more proactive in getting more hits, hitting for more power, getting
Yeah.
more runs. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it, like I said, comes down to our youth. I mean, I can definitely see Wallner taking the step because he played well in the regular season. Post his very first postseason, didn't play well. I could definitely see him being a factor in the postseason. I do think Julian's going to end up being really good, and so if even a few of these young guys can pick things up, if we can just pick up the pieces of having probably will be a little bit of a weaker rotation. Not to mention the fact that we could definitely do something at the trade deadline if it shows that we can get to that point. I think this Twins front office is a lot more willing to trade guys for the middle of the season to make a playoff push than they are willing to pay money upright.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's pretty clear with the TV deals going on. I think the Twins will. I hate to say it, I think the Twins are going to get to the same point we did this year and not make it past that point. I still don't see us getting past a team like the Orioles, the why am I blanking here? The Orioles, the Rays, the Astros. I just don't see it right now. And I could definitely be proven wrong, but I think we'll be a very similar team to last year, and I just don't know if our hitting will be good enough next season. I think a lot of our young guys are going to have to step up in order to make that a reality. But we have to cross our fingers, see what happens, and there's still so much left to talk about. I'm hoping we can get back on here in March and do a full, proper breakdown based on everything that actually did happen, because so much is still up in the air. But thank you, Jake, for joining me for only the second guest I've ever had on this podcast besides my wife.
Connor, it was an absolute pleasure, and I love talking sports with you,
Yeah.
man.
Tune in a couple days where we're going to do a really quick breakdown of the state of the Vikings heading into week 14 in their bye week. So Jake will be on here for one more episode. But thanks so much for watching this one. Let me know in the comments what you think. And as always, I'll see you on the flip side.